Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
A heo no no.
Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
A heo no no. Ke ua ka hono ma ke alo piko la ka he momo na piko ka te nuila. Iha liha vane ke momo ne akula. O ka oho i o hala e ke kaila. O ka oho benu e pe benu anala. He ona tau mi taho i tau i tau i te momo ne a. Adu.
Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
A heo no no.
Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
A heo no no. Mai pi koi o hige a hulela ai ia ai ka honula o e ho o e ka ia naila e ka mahani ni pule hule hula o ke kole ka ia maka ona ona la e ona tau i taho i tau i tau hui te momonea atu
Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
a he ono no
Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
a he ono no
Heo nei no o no.
a he ono no
Heo nei no o no.
a he ono no Shua make a beef stew, heavy on extra salad, do scoop of rice on a hamburger bun. Hot dog, kimchi, chila pepper water, apple, apple, mahi sandwich. Top it all off with the pico manchoni. Hey on the toe, ito, eat them money. Adu,
Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
a he ono no,
Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
a he ono no.
Shua make a beef stew, heavy on extra salad, do scoop of rice on a hamburger bun. Hot dog, kimchi, chila pepper water, apple, mahi sandwich. Top it all off with the pico manchoni. Hey on the toe, ito, eat them money.
Adu,
Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
a he ono no,
Heo noa, heo nei no o no.
a he ono no.
Heo noa, heo nei no. No.
A he ono no.
Huvai mapuna kapuga ainu ha'aola kapua anoe e na hupu na kūpuna e malama ka mapuna I ola loa I mauli ola Yeah.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome. At first, though, I would like to invite Mama Ino if she would like to do Waikumu. And
then maybe Marlene and we can both call back. If
That
you're
sounds
Maika'i to do
awesome.
that, Marlene.
Okay.
Thank you.
Waikumu!
Waikumu!
Waikumu kamare!
Kamane.
Kamao.
Kamao.
It was good to do.
Gurisudu.
Why do mude?
Etumute.
Wai kumu.
Waikumu.
Wai kumu.
Waikumu.
Wai kumu.
Waikumu. Oh yeah. Mahalo Mama Ino.
Mahalo, thank you very much. And welcome everyone to the ʻUlu DRS webinar series presented by the Mapuna Lab at the University of Hawaii Thompson School of Social Work and Public Health. Welcome back to those of you returning from the first webinar that was 2 weeks ago, and welcome to all the new faces. This webinar is on food security and is part 2 of our 6-part training series developed for providers, clinicians, and cultural practitioners. In this training module, we will be making connections to behavioral health services in response to natural disaster in Hawaii. This series helps us to indigenize our perspectives on disaster in order to provide a culturally safe approach to disaster response. Whether you are native Hawaiian, identify as Pacific Islander, live in Hawaii, or none of the above, this training is for you, and we hope that it enlightens and it resonates with you. We have some webinar etiquette to go over first. We invite you all to accept the request to become a panelist so that you may engage with everyone here if you are comfortable, sorry. As a panelist, please keep your microphone muted if you are not speaking. You can utilize the chat function at the bottom of your toolbar on your desktop Zoom or in the top right menu of your mobile to access the chat. You also have the function to use the Q&A if you have any questions, and we will get to the Q&A as soon as we can. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand using the emoticon function on your toolbar, and we will also get to you when possible. This webinar is being recorded for future viewing on YouTube, and you will receive a link to the recording in your post-webinar email, along with the resources and your toolkit. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us at uludrs@hawaii.edu. As a note, this series offers continuing education units or CEUs, so please remember to complete the evaluation form that will be in your post-webinar email as well as at the end of this webinar to receive your CEUs. The feedback form is not required for all others, but we encourage you to complete it so that we can get better at this. I'd like to hand it off to Kaʻiana now to go over our series for today.
Aloha mai kākou. Mahalo nui, and it's so wonderful to see all of you again. I'm Kaʻiana Runnels. I'm the project manager. I wanted to first discuss, before we begin, let's first explore the concept of food sovereignty. So on here, we have a definition of what food sovereignty is. This is a movement, a long growing movement from farmers and fishermen, indigenous people, and landless workers, most impacted by global hunger, poverty, issues that stem from the decisions of corporations, governments, and inept leadership. The International Peasant Movement, La Via Campesina, at the World Food Summit in 1996 framed the concept of food sovereignty as being rooted in the ongoing global struggles over control of food, land, water, and livelihoods. Can you switch slides? Food sovereignty is much more than putting food on the table. It goes beyond ensuring that people have enough food to meet their physical needs. It asserts that people must reclaim their power in the food system by rebuilding their relationships between the people and the land, and between food providers and those who eat food. For us indigenous peoples of Hawaii and Pacific Islanders, it's about reconnecting to our ancestral roots, reclaiming our ancestral memories of who we are and where we come from. Much of today's statistics on the socioeconomic status of Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders is that we have the highest rates of obesity, diabetes, and other health disparities. But that's not our story, and that's not the story we're sharing today. So next slide, we're gonna discuss our learning objectives. So here today, we would like you to conceptualize food sovereignty and disaster response. We were hoping to equip you with the tools and skills to independently prepare and access food amidst a crisis. Participants will define the relationship between food security and disaster response amongst Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. You would be able to define the importance of kūpuna crops in building food security. You will also be able to identify food-based skills and tools to apply to clinical signs and symptoms of serious mental illness and substance misuse. Next slide, we will discuss today's agenda. So this is what we're going to experience in the next 2 hours. So we have our disaster preparedness toolkit that will consist of a pule, our ki'i, ku'uʻaina aloha, a glossary, and primary literature. We will then have a Kūkākūkā, a discussion with our community navigators. Next, we'll hear from our clinical psychologist, Dr. Dayna Schultz, on clinical signs and symptoms. And then you'll get to meet our incredible guest speakers. And after that, we'll have our evaluation. So I'm going to pass this on now to our ku'ule.
Aloha nui kako. Welcome to part 2. I see some of you that have joined us in part 1, and I'm happy to see you all. So now is the time that I tell you about the toolkit, and we disseminate or talk about the things that will be disseminated electronically after the webinar ends. For those of us who missed the first part of the series, I can just explain that we disseminate these tools, and these tools, again, are emailed to you afterward, but inclusive in these tools are a ki'i and a pule. And so it can be a little disorienting for some people who are really familiar with sterile webinars with all of the different, you don't usually see like maybe chants or songs or dances or art or those kinds of things in any kind of disaster response webinar. Maybe you wouldn't really see that. But this is a culturally anchored webinar. And so those kinds of things make sense in this space. So we're talking about this ki'i. Ki'i is the Hawaiian word for picture or image, but functionally, ki'i also means to retrieve something. So if I ask someone to go pick up the pencil on the table, I use the word e ki'i ka penika la makepakokau, to grab the pencil from the table. Our pictures and our artwork in general, has the function of retrieving a particular energy. So the tools that we're disseminating today include art as the retrieval device. So the idea is that when you see these particular art pieces, which is part of a larger mural, you will recall the things that we talked about in the webinar and in the series. And you will also be given and taught a pule called ha'ule, which we went over the last time as well. But this pule is also something you can actually reach for in spaces of disaster, whether it be natural disaster, personal disaster, spiritual disaster, because we talked about the different kinds of disaster last time. So we're talking about the ki'i, we're teaching you the pule, and the glossary and primary literature from the webinar will also be disseminated afterward. Next slide, please. So when we're looking at the ki'i, I am so grateful for Anakia Meleana Meyer for having us be in relation to the mural that she's created with some ho'aloha with Al and Harinani and Kahi and Carl and Solomon. I want to invite Auntie to say a few mana'o about the mural. We can do the next slide, and Auntie, you can mana'o mai, olu mai oe.
Mahalo, Kako, for the opportunity to speak about this work. It's very unusual. As you see, there are 2 portions of the mural. This is a very large piece. It's 20 by 6 feet. And the intention of the work was to paint away pain. And instead, pain was painted away underneath the blue mo'olelo stories on the bottom. But as we thought about the times and our communities, so many of the group wanted to continue having a conversation about pain, which is really incredible if you think about it. So believe it or not, that second piece on the top is the backside of this mural. So it's a double-sided mural, and it's actually quite exceptional because the mana and the mana'o of it is to say, we typically have hidden and put our pain behind us. But in this particular piece, you have a chance to walk around the other side and actually see the pain. So it holds energy, and what it is an energy that's universal in our suffering, all of us. whether it's because a spouse died or a child has run away or there's no food on the table for a week or someone has been abused. All of those things are universals in the sense that those experiences are not unique to one group or another. And that's really an important thing to know, that this disaster preparedness is really meant for us to understand our history, the education that we need to better equip our families, which is why this particular program with Mapuna is so critically important to all of us. It gives us a chance to makaukau or ho makaukau, which is to prepare for things or to better understand. And this extraordinary team has taught me so much. So as I bring this work in for you all to contemplate, just know that the work on the bottom, if you were to walk into a room, it's 20 feet, it's quite significant. The work starts on the right, and it starts with our creation mythology, our ki'i that are our old traditions, haloa nakalau kapalili, our beloved brother Kalo. And the other images that follow in the story we'll also focus on today, because they are kūpuna images. They are about the land. They are about our understanding of Aina, which is that which feeds us. That which feeds us is our mother. So we have our maternal, but we also have our spiritual and our cosmic and our cultural mother, who is the land. And the pain side, which we won't have time to get to today at all, it has to do with universal pain. So just keep that visual in mind, because it doesn't belong to one culture or another. It belongs to all of us who are in the process of healing from different things. So Kule, thank you for the opportunity to share just a bit about the beginning of the mural, which we haven't even gotten to the middle yet. So the exciting part is to be able to understand that the story unfolds. The story is a continuum of our lives and the way we want to present this work to you. So mahalo, mahalo nui kako. And if there are any questions, we'll get to that at the end. Okay, mahalo.
Mahalo, Auntie. Mahalo for that mana'o on universality, the universality of pain. When we're looking at disaster and food security, those things are very universal. And though this ki'i, like the one on the bottom, of the kūpuna and of, this is a very Hawaiʻi scape. It looks very Hawaiʻi, you know, this bottom piece. We have kalo, which is very Hawaiʻi Pacific Islander. We have lots of melanin in the people on and in the ki'i, and these things are very Hawaiʻi. But what I see, I just want to share that what I see when I see this ki'i is strength and resilience and root to land. Root relation to land. And that is a very universal thing. So those of us who are joining who may not be of Pacific Island or Hawaiian descent, I hope you're also able to retrieve that from this picture and from this image. That though pain and disaster may be very real and very heavy, another thing that is very real and very heavy is our relation to Earth and our relation to ancestry and our relation to root and our relation to resilience and the ability to overcome. And so just mahalo for all of those mana'o, Auntie. We can go to the next slide. So we talked about this the last time, but every webinar is going to feature a piece of the ki'i is the mahele, or the chunk of the mural. And so ideally there are 6 portions that we're focusing on. Last time we focused on the ko'a, the ki'i and the kalo. And today, on the second webinar, you can see kūpuna, aumakua, and aina. And so we're on the second part of this mural now. Auntie, do you have any mana'o?
You know, the exciting part for all of you to know is that we depend on each other. And for islanders, that means everyone. Everyone has a role to play. And whether you're the fisherman or the mahiʻai, whether you're the kūpuna, we're dishonoring in number 2, the section, has to do with ancestors. So whether they are here or not, as in present in form, or wahala, as in having gone before, and our spirit ancestors, we draw on all of their energy. And that is a very important aspect of our work, that they embody who we are, who we aspire to be, and that mother for us is the land. And if people understood that all the world over, they wouldn't ever want to desecrate or hurt her, because she feeds us. And that's really important to think of abundance and preparation for anything with the knowledge of being ho'omakau, as in grounded and rooted. Thank you.
Mahalo. Mahalo. Auntie, this ki'i that we're looking at is a piece of the larger mural. And it represents, correct me if I'm wrong, but these alo represent kūpuna and ʻaina and ʻaumakua, yes?
Yes.
And so this is those are Hawaiian words, but kūpuna is ancestor, ʻaumakua is spirit guide, and ʻaina has relation to land. And so when we see this ki'i, retrieved is the mana of all of those things. That's the idea of this process and this practice. When you see this ki'i, remember your own aumakua. Remember your own spiritual relations, whether that be a Christian relation, whether that be through actual aumakua or animal guides or spirit guides. Embody that and call that in the spaces of disaster that you experience. When you're looking at the kūpuna part, remember the strength of your actual ancestors, your actual people that you come from, their resilience. If you are a Pacific Islander person, remember their strength and their brilliance and their ability to survive with very little material things other than what's given by the earth. This ki'i calls us to remember our direct relationship to land. Some people might be like, well, I'm not a farmer. I don't really have that direct relation. But don't you eat? You know, everyone eats. So we have kind of a disconnect when people start talking about land. We forget to think about the breakfast that we ate and how likely that's a byproduct of the land that we live on. And so let this ki'i remind us that throughout whatever disaster we experience, there are three very important keys to reflect on when we're looking at being okay through disaster and responding to those things.
And don't forget about Papahonua, and Gaia. Gaia is a beautiful word that I love, because if you think about Earth as sentient, as living, all things, and that is an indigenous way of thinking, because if you think the water is alive, it nourishes you so that the foods. That's the exciting part for me, is all is living and all is sentient, whether you're Baha'i or Buddhist. These philosophies are present in all of these traditional modes and philosophies. And it's with deep reverence that we love the land, because she indeed feeds us.
Oh yeah, mahalo no. Next slide, please. So we went over the ki'i portion of the toolkit, which you will receive post-webinar. Now we're looking at the Pule. Does anybody know the word Pule and what that means? Maybe thumbs up if you know it, if you've heard it. Pule is the Hawaiian word for prayer. It also includes, chants can be prayers, thoughts can be prayers, no words at all can be prayers. But this Pule takes the form of a chant. So we're equipping you with a ki'i to retrieve the strength that you need in actual disaster. And we're equipping you with a prayer, again, to equip you with the strength that you need to pull through. And so this Pule is called ha'ule. It comes from a traditional prophecy that talks about the falling of the chiefs. The prophecy says that the chiefs will fall, and someday the common people will have to rise up and claim power. That is, sure, political power, but mostly agency. agency and the ability for us to lead ourselves and for us to really take hold of what it is we do with our lives, what it is that we eat, what it is that we nourish our bodies with, what it is that we do with our time. Ha'ule talks about the crumbling of all of these pieces of the external world. Those things crumble and the internal self rises up to reclaim relation to truth. And so it's a deep prayer, and it's really, there's a depth to it, and maybe we can make more time to talk about all of those applications another time. But today we're focusing on the application that has to food sovereignty and food security. So there's this olalo no eo, or this proverb, that is huli kalima iluna make, huli kalima ilalo ola. And that means when your hands are faced upward like this, like actually like when you're reaching in through the drive-through to grab the cups that the soda that they send you through the McDonald's, your hands are literally like this, right? And they go through the drive-through window. This olalo no eo says that this is a death. To just ask, and be handed things is a death. Huli kalima ilalo, but when you flip your hands to the ground and work the soil and work the land and pick things with your, eat things with your body that you grew with your own hands, there you will find life. And so I want to uplift that olalo no eo as we learn and do this pule, because it reminds us that we have the agency to grow our own food. We may not have a whole 10-acre parcel, but we can do a balcony garden or a little hothouse or or anything, you know, in any space. We have the ability to take control of what it is that we eat. And so that and its function in food security and disaster response is important as we learn this pule. Next slide, please. So here is the actual pule. What you do is you upoho. This is called the upoho. So everyone, please, you don't have to unmute yourselves, but if I can see you all clap like this in a cupped way, yes. And then you clap like this, just a regular clap. So this pule is a lot of this. What you're doing is you're creating a cadence and getting into, weaving yourself into the prayer. Okay? And so that's the underlying cadence. What we see here is ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani'au. Ha'ule means to fall. So all of these things of the external environment, they're falling. Oh my gosh, all of the buildings, that is literally disaster. You know, the day falls, the night falls, the heavens fall, the structure of all the things are falling. And ho'ale kalepo popolo. That last line talks about the billowing up of the rich earth. And so these things can be very abstract, and no worries. We're going to take a break in a little bit. If you aren't following me, no worries. You just keep the cadence going. That's what you do, okay? Anyway, this last line, ho'ale kalepo popolo, is the line where we reclaim our relationship to our own mana, our own power, our independence and our sovereign way. So just that, our personal sovereignty, just to keep those things in mind. So yes, the words are ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani'au, ho'ale kalepo popolo. You'll receive these words in the PDF. You'll also receive a video of this chant so that you can practice it after I do it here. And then we will all ideally be able to do it together by the 6th part of the series. Okay, so this is ha'ule. Please join me in clapping, and if you can read Hawaiian words, join me in the chant while you're muted. Ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani auho, ale kalepo po polo. Ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani auho, ale kalepo po polo. ule kala, ule kapo, ule kalani, ule kani auho, ale kalepo po polo. And that is the Pule. And so it's a lot of lung capacity you have to do that all in one breath per time. That'll come. You'll build that. Until then, you just sneak breaths when you can, you know. We'll do this Pule again toward the end, but I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to, I think, Kea, so that we can continue on with the webinar. Mahalo for joining me. I think we actually might be going on a break. What is next?
Actually, and we will be taking a short break. So
Oh,
please just ingest that Pule, let it resonate with you, and we'll see you in about 5 minutes. For now, I'm going to play a song for you guys.
This song is called Ka'ulu Vehio Ke Kai. And I just want to say that Auntie Edith Kanakaʻole wrote this song. So I don't know if you guys know Mary Monarch, but they host the hula festival in the Edith Kanakaʻole Stadium. Anyway, just it's good to hear her voice. Mahalo, enjoy your break.
You booked a sunny Verbo ski chalet.
Ui, alo kakaya kakako, e alamai. Ke ihone ke kai na hoi he maha. E pakako kahakai. Ohi limu. Na kamea nui kalimu. Pahe e na hoi. Kalimu ele ele. Kalipoa na hoi. A e kipa mai kako o kau. Ko kako ai na kakahi a kakela o yoi. O kalimu. Na kamea, kamele ke ia kaulu wehi o ke kai na hoi. Kali
Do you think any of us will look back in our life?
Okay. Velina mai kako. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back, everybody. Go on, Kea.
Yeah, no worries. Can you hear me good? Oh my kai. Yeah, mahalo for that beautiful mele, and just wanted to welcome you guys back. Wait to hear some more screens coming back. Here we go. Okay, my kai. I hope we took that time to have a drink of water, fresh life-giving water. Sit with that incredible ʻoli that we just learned. We're gonna move on now to our community navigators. So here we, I think, is it the slide before that one? So we are very fortunate to have community navigators with us, present with us today, that are gonna share about their culture, about the disaster that they have continuously been going through, and how it relates to climate change. And then after our community navigators, we'll hear from Wayne Tanaka. So I wanna welcome Tulpe Day to begin sharing for us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again for this invite and making this place available for us to share what we have. I'm going to share how breadfruit take care of her people. I am from Koshai, so I'm going to talk about how breadfruit take care of people from Koshai from way back to now. We call breadfruit mos, M-O-S, and we have about 11 varieties. But my mom, who is 82, believes there's more than 11, more than 11 varieties. And I'm sure the other Micronesian islands have more varieties than Koshai. Some of the breadfruit trees that grows back home are very tall, to about 3-story buildings. The trunk is huge, big enough to carve a canoe, carve paddles, boy pounder, or poi pounder boards, like in this photos here. The leaves are used as a fan to cool you off, or fan the fire if you are cooking with firewood. It can also use as a weapon. I mean, the edge, I have a leaf here with me today. The edge is hard enough that you can use it to discipline hard-headed kids. The edge itself, the same edge of the leaf, is used as a medicine for eyes. When the leaf is in between green and ripe, you can cut the edge, peel the skin, and squeeze it in the eye. This is kind of like our local Physin eye drops. The sticky white sap of the tree is used to catch flies or any bugs. For the fruit itself, one breadfruit tree can feed an average 10 families per season. So many breadfruit that our people learn how to store them to last for a long period. There are several ways to preserve the breadfruit, but one common way that Koshaians do, they strand the breadfruit with hibiscus fiber and let it flow in very still water where no waves, no current for a couple of days, waiting for the fruit to slowly ripen and get salted naturally from the sea salt. When the breadfruit are ready, they bury it underground in a large pit, cover with leaves, and then put rocks on top of the leaves. The best place to bury breadfruit is near the end of a stream or where the river meets the ocean. If blended ʻUlus, they make 2 layers from the same bit, and this stays underground for years. It feeds the people till the next ʻUlu season. So how this breadfruit cook? We pound it, we mix it with coconut cream and cook it in the underground oven. Some pound and mix with ripe cooking bananas, can be steamed or cooked in underground oven. And of course, glaze it with coconut cream. This is some of ways of cooking ʻUlus. And I will pass this on to Auntie Ino to share some of how they do it in Juke or other participants on here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Talpe. I'm hungry just listening to you telling of how you make the ʻUlu. So I will pass it on to the other navigators because they are more expert in cooking and making the food. I'm the best one to eat it. So Marlene or Pilori and Dexter, if you're here, it will be really awesome to talk about the way you make the food or even the way we share the food to everyone. So without further ado, this is your session.
Hi everyone, my name is Marlene. I'm from the island of Chuk, the other island of Chuk called Lukunor. We do the same way as Tope did with the breadfruit, but there are 2 ways we do with the breadfruit. Some like it to be pounded, some like it to be just cut down in pieces and then you cook it in water. And then after that, you take it out, then you put the coconut milk on it. But there are 2 ways that you do the coconut milk. We use silk material, but before we use, I don't know the name of, with the coconut, there is this brown thing that wraps around it. Sorry, I don't know the name, but as we call it autek. So we use that to put the coconut inside and then squeeze the juice. There are 2 kinds of juice of the coconut that we use. The first one, you squeeze it out. That's the one you're going to use it on the breadfruit. And the second one, that's the one you're going to use when you put in, you're going to put in the second milk, the coconut milk, and then you put in the breadfruit. And then you put the first one on top of it. The first one is kind of has starchy. So you don't need to cook it because it's already starchy. And nowadays, my generation like it to be sweet. So others, they put sugar, but we don't, but it's okay because it's sweet anyways. So there are 2 ways of the breadfruit. You prepare the breadfruit. One, you pound it, and the other one, you just cut in pieces and serve it, and you put the coconut milk. And the way you prepare the one you pounded, there are also 2 ways. One, they call it lazy way, which is you just put the whole breadfruit in a big bowl, and then they cut it like design it. And then you pour the juice of the coconut milk on top. But the other way is you make it like in circles, then you put it around. So some people, when they see you serve them with the one that you design it, they call it, oh, so you're just tired, you don't put the effort in it. So you're too lazy to cook. And the other ones, when they see you make it like donut, kind of donut shape, and they like it because it, to me, The one with the tuna shape, it lasts longer, 2 or 3 days. But the one that they just cut it in the bowl, you just design it with your finger. That lasted also 2 days. And when it's had the mold on it, the way we preserve that is we take off the mold and then we mix it again with coconut milk. And then we put under the crown, we call it, as we call it, the Hawaiians call it umu. And that's the way we preserve our breadfruit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marlene and Talpe. Like I said, I don't really do the work on it, but I do all the eating for all these things that they talk about. So I am gonna share what that really means to us when we prepare food or gather food. It's a declaration of the men declaring their strength and their ability when they go and gather the ʻulu and they come back and prepare it. And you see the men all usually do the breadfruit because it symbolizes something. My name is Fal, the rock or the stone that you use to pound this ʻulu and anything. I am reminded also every time that I see this, how important the value of our own traditional way of making the food, because it's an identity for us. I'm sharing this because this is the one that Dexter's supposed to be sharing about, but there is a disaster in his own ohana, because there are people passing in his ohana that he's not able to be here with us today. But I know our families in Chuk are preparing so much food because of the funerals and the gatherings that they have. And even during those gatherings, as they prepare those food, they are mending each other's disaster. They are healing each other. The men, when they pound the ʻulu, they are calling each other to sharing the strength of their sound. You know that there is a particular sound of ʻulu pounding, and when they pound the ʻulu and they make that sound, you almost can recognize who that sound belonged to and the identity of who was making that sound. Every time I hear that in the cooking house, I can tell, oh, Papa Tetor is already preparing food for the gathering. I remember times when all the women come together to help each other. As the men bring the ʻulu, the women, they take it and they take apart the skin, they prepare it, they put it in the big pots, and then they put it on fire, and there is a sound of cheerfulness and sound of just joy of preparing those food. You know how they said when you prepare something and it tastes sour because you don't have the heart in it? Well, I also believe that the reason why our food lasts long is because it's prepared with loving heart and loving hand. And when these women also, they're the ones who serve the men this hot breadfruit for them to pound it. They cannot pound it when it's cold. And that also symbolizes something for the people, that the hotter it is, the best it is to pound it, and the more lasting it will be. So it's also a metaphor of when there are things that are not settled and we just
leave it as it is, but we don't pound it away and take care of it, it will always serve us and hurt us. But when we deal with it together and take care of it, we will all benefit from it. Just in preparation of the ʻUlu, every part of that ʻUlu that we talk about has a meaning and a purpose. And every time that we prepare this ʻUlu and we know that this ʻUlu is gonna be given to somebody, the island is so small that when there is a celebration or there is something going on, the whole island know of it. And everybody come with food and prepare a big bowl of taro and breadfruit and fish to share food with each other, to say we are in this together. Sharing of food, sharing of your abundance of food and wellness. It's not good when you just hoard it to yourself and you're not share it with others. It's meaningless when it's not being shared. And so you can see in these pictures the joy of working together. This is when they laugh and share about how to make the best tuba or the best mat or anti-craft or what's happening in their community, how they can better raise the children. Like I said, my name is Fal when I was a little girl because I'm so mischievous and curious. I want to know everything, but the whole island raised me and feeds me and make sure that I don't just continue to be a negative Fal, but I'm a positive Fal to the community, that I learned from them to be a better servant of my own people. So I hope you help us to stay connected to the land here. No matter where we are, we still reflect back to where we come from. As the ocean doesn't separate us, it connects us. And no matter where we at, we are still symbolizing home with us when we try to continue to further practice our tradition and our culture. And yes, fact, I really forget some of this English word today. I wake up this morning and I couldn't remember some words, especially, you know, how you preserve food for a long time. I knew the word, it started with F, but I totally forgot how to say it this morning.
Ferment, Mama
There
Ina.
you go, thank you so much. And you see, we all understood what ferment is because it's important. The longer we preserve our food, the longer we are able to share with one another. And, you know, I found out that the best kind of kimchi are the ones that are fermented the longest. And I thought about my grandmother, how she make the best fermented ʻUlu, especially the ones that she stepped on it in the ocean and it gets the juice out, and then she stepped on it for, I mean, she doesn't really step on the ʻUlu, and it's not gonna be good after it's wrapped in a sack, and then she bring it in the ocean instead of, you know, melting it in water. She meant it in the ocean so that it tastes good, almost like how Talbe was sharing about hers. But that's the only kind of fermented ʻUlu I can handle. But the one that is so sour, that's Esther's favorite. It's called maramal, and I cannot handle that because it's just too sour. And then I found out that kimchi is the same way. The longest they do, they preserve it, and the more sour it is, it's the best healing medicine for you. And so now I'm thinking maybe I should take a second thought of it and eat more of the maramal. Maybe I will stay healthier if I eat that fermented one. So I can talk on and on about our food. Like I said, I love to eat it. I don't like to do it because you can see it's a lot of work. I like to sit around and listen to the stories and just be the hands and feet for them. But when it gets to prepare it, it looks so hard, even though it's still joyful to do it. And I married a man from the lagoon because in the Chuukese culture, the men in the lagoon, they do all the hard work. But us women in the Mortlocks, the women do all the hard work. And I said, I'm gonna marry someone from the lagoon so that he will do all the cooking and I will do all the eating. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to share with you our culture. It's so similar in the whole Pacific Island, how we come together for food. Thank you.
Mahalo nui, Mama Ino, Marlene, Tope, thank you so much for sharing these vital, important skills. This is science meets spiritual meets skill. And this knowledge is what's going to carry us when there's major disasters, when the barges stop coming. So I hope you retained this ike that they shared. Thank you so much. I want to turn it on now to our Wayne Tanaka. He's the executive director of the Sierra Club and has been doing a lot to help fight against the Red Hill issue happening, because without fresh water, our food systems will not be able to happen. So I'm gonna turn it on over to Wayne. Mahalo.
Thank you, Kelly. Good morning, everyone. So glad to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity to talk about Red Hill and why we're fighting so hard to prevent the current crisis from becoming a catastrophe. And specifically what this could mean for our food security and our ability to respond to disasters, additional disasters in the future. I have a quick, oh shoot. You think I can share my screen? Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I think, beyond the the bigger picture, beyond the future of our island, I think hopefully this will illustrate, how in this era of climate change, especially protecting water is going to be more important than ever before. And so beyond Red Hill, we need to remember the importance of water as a precious thing, as has been recognized in our islands since time immemorial. And it's because we forgot this, I think, that or because people forgot and have allowed this threat to our water to persist. And that's why we're in this current crisis at Red Hill. So once we end, this situation, hopefully we remember this lesson and that we all have a role and a responsibility to honor our past and to protect our future by ensuring that our water is appropriately protected and valued. There we go. So just real quick, for today, I'll just run through some fast facts on the Maunalua-Waimalu aquifer, as well as the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility that's situated 100 feet above this groundwater source. And then I'll talk a little bit about the current crisis and some of the why we have ongoing concerns about how this could turn into something much more catastrophic. And then I'll kind of touch base on some of the ramifications that a catastrophe could have on our food security here in Oahu and potentially throughout Hawaii. I think it's first, I think it's important to recognize that all water is precious here in the islands, but the Waiʻola, the waters of Moanalua is particularly sacred. There's mo'olelo that talk about how Kamawai Luolani, who is the son of Papa and Wakea, actually settled in Moanalua Valley because his wife Kahikilaulani was able to find water there. And through his occupation of the valley, it became like a pali'uli, like an abundant garden of Eden, and from which people came forth and were provided for. These waters have been a foundation of life on Oahu, for millennia. Pearl Harbor has been, or Pule has been recognized, or was recognized as a place of great abundance. There's like 30 something local i'a, as well as an adjacent in Ke'ehi. The lands were royal lands. They were recognized for their abundance. There were storied lo'i kalo that were fed by a spring, Iemi Spring, in the region. So this was a very significant source of life for Oahu for generations. Today, it also now serves as a principal drinking water source for Oahu. The wells adjacent to Kūkākūkā provide for 20% of the water from Halawa all the way to Mauna Lua. So there's about 400,000 people that live in this region. This is downtown Honolulu. This is Waikiki, all the valleys and communities in this area. And essentially, if your zip code starts with 968, then a significant amount of your water came from this aquifer. And that takes us to the Red Hill fuel facility. So in the 1940s, early 1940s, the US Navy installed 20 250-foot tall tanks. Each one could hold about 12.5 million gallons. So it has a total capacity of 250 million gallons in Kūkākūkā. So each tank is essentially 25 stories tall. It can hold the entire Aloha Tower in them. And if when they were installed, there was the steel liner, which is the only thing that can contain the fuel, was a 1/4 inch thick. So imagine if you shrank one of these tanks down to the size of a hydro flask, its walls would be the thickness of tinfoil. And that was when they were brand new, which was about 80 years ago. Currently, there's well over 100 million gallons of fuel that continue to be stored in this facility, even now, in about 14 or 15 of the tanks. The Navy's not clear about how many tanks are full. But we do know that basically since the 1940s, this facility has been leaking fuel continually. So at least 180,000 gallons, that's probably a very conservative figure, have been released before this most recent spill. We found there is petroleum components in the groundwater below the farm. And then last year happened. And so if you look at the slide on the right, that's actually a water sample from the Red Hill shaft, from the aquifer under the farm, the field farm. We still don't know what caused it. There's a working theory that there's a much larger release than they thought occurred in May of 2021 when a bunch of pipes exploded as they're transferring fuel due to pressure changes. The water system that the Navy's water system that serves about 93,000 people has been contaminated. About over 5,000 people presented for medical screenings when the military flew in some medical intervention teams. Half to 75% of them exhibited signs of petroleum exposure. So nausea, vomiting, rashes, people's hair was falling out. There's also no clear information on what the long-term effects may be, just because this doesn't happen. Like, water people don't drink fuel usually. And so essentially these folks are going to be kind of like a case study. Like the CDC is trying to track everyone down and creating a registry to see if there's any long-term health impacts. About 3,000 military families are living in alternative lodging. So basically hotels, and trying to raise their kids, send them to school, just because there's no clean water in their houses. I think it's one thing that's really sad is the impacts on the schools and how it's impacted the students there, as well as the faculty, in all kinds of different ways, like behavioral health issues, dietary issues, because they basically can only eat pizza and chicken nuggets, or things that you can cook without water, loss in instruction time because of all the complications of trying to find alternative sources of water for students. This is just a heat map of where health complaints occurred after the spill in November. And I think it's really important to remember, or to understand, that we still don't know how this is going to impact life on Oahu, especially as summer approaches. So this is just a groundwater flow tracer flow model illustrating different ways that the fuel beneath the facility could migrate over to different wells if they were to turn back on. So of course, the Board of Water Supply is not going to turn on like these major wells until they know it's safe to do so. Unfortunately, we don't know where the plume is right now. There's not timely data from the monitoring wells. Are supposed to be able to at least let us know, where contamination may be. And so until we get the information, the wells are going to be shut down, which means, especially in the summer when demand goes up, we may be looking at water conservation mandates, which in itself is going to have impacts like not just you can't wash your car or water your lawn, but it's going to be like no water meters that you need for affordable housing, for example. I'm not sure what it's going to look like in the hotels when tourists come over the summer and the water demand is going to be particularly high to meet their needs. And then could this get worse? Absolutely. So as we speak, there's well over 100 million gallons of fuel that continue to remain in this facility. It's 100 feet above the groundwater aquifer. We know that these tanks are actively corroding. And what happened is because their walls are so thin, the steel liner, they're surrounding concrete, and the concrete actually is trapping moisture against that steel liner so that water and steel and metal don't mix, especially after 80 years. And so when they broke panels off of one tank just to kind of look and see how bad it was, they found like it's corroding way faster than the Navy anticipated. Because of the concrete too, we can't actually see where the corrosion is happening unless they break the concrete off, which would destroy, break the tank, and they don't want to do that, or they can't do that. So what they do is essentially what you see on the left is a person hanging from the ceiling of one of these tanks, and he's holding a hand scanner and trying to scan the entire wall of this massive tank to try and find areas where it may need to be repaired or patched. It's obviously an unreliable way of determining whether these tanks are sound or not, and if they need fixing. And when they actually did, again, take parts of one tank and break them off and see, observe the corrosion directly after it had been inspected, it turns out that 4 out of 10 of the samples they took were off, like the Navy had missed the mark. So in 2 of them, they had said, oh, the tank's fine in this section, and it turned out it wasn't fine. It needed to be patched. And in 2 other cases, they had said, oh, it needs to be patched, but it actually hadn't corroded to the point to where the Navy standards call for the tank to be patched. So it's not a very accurate or precise way of looking for vulnerabilities in the tank walls. And that's for the tanks that haven't inspected. So 8 of the tanks that right now have 10 million gallons of fuel in them have not been inspected in decades, in over 20 years, 3 of these in almost 40 years, if not more. And that's the only thing that keeps the fuel from being released into the environment. They do have a couple other ways that they monitor for leaks. They call it tank tightness and fuel level monitoring. But these systems actually can't detect slow leaks. So about 1,600 to 2,400 gallons of fuel could be released from a single tank without being detected, which is really concerning because, one, you just don't want fuel to be going into the environment, especially when it's so close to the water. And the other thing is, if there is undetected presence of fuel around these tanks and then something else happens, like there's an electrical fire or another explosion that causes sparking, then that's a fire risk, which could be really, really bad. The Navy's own risk assessment also found that it's expected that 5,000 gallons of fuel will be slowly released from this facility every year. And that doesn't include the potential for a sudden release. So there's actually a 80% chance that up to 33,000 gallons of fuel may be suddenly released from this facility in the next 5 years. It's something like 96%, almost a certainty that there will be a release of between up to 30,000 gallons in 10 years. And then we don't even know if these leak monitoring systems work. There's an active leak in Pule at Hotel Pier, which is connected to the facility that was ongoing for at least 6 months before the Navy could confirm it. We still don't know where this Red Hill shaft contamination is coming from. And yeah, so why don't we know? Why don't we know about these leaks if their leak detection system is so great? And then and then we come to the things that even if their systems work perfectly, they simply can't prevent, right? So they can't prevent earthquakes. In 1948, there was a earthquake that hit Oahu. One of these tanks lost about 46,000 gallons of fuel. And that was when these tanks were pretty brand new and not actively corroding for 80 years. And so another earthquake like that could be catastrophic. The Navy obviously can't prevent human error, which is what caused the most recent spill, as well as the 27,000 gallon release in 2014. And you combine these things along with the vulnerabilities in their systems, and you're basically playing with disaster. And so what happens if there's a catastrophic release? Well, we know that the current crisis is going to be dwarfed. If 19,000 gallons versus like 1 million gallons, which is just a fraction of the fuel in one tank, it would be dwarfed. Once fuel gets into the aquifer, especially on a catastrophic level, you can't clean it. It's going to be like that for generations, potentially. The worst case is we don't know about a big release and a plume gets sucked into the municipal wells, which means our water system's contaminated, which means we're pretty much done in terms of tap water. Best case scenario is that we're able to shut the wells down in time, but then we still have up to 20% or more of our island's water supply inaccessible. And in either case, as you can imagine, there's going to be catastrophic impacts to pretty much every aspect of life here on Oahu, and which will ripple throughout the islands as well. But what about food security? So I think just to kind of focus in on the impacts to our food security and ability to weather additional disasters, loss of this water we're going to need this water now more than ever. The water is going to be the primary medium to which we feel the impacts of climate change. Is what the United Nations recognizes. Without this water, everyone needs water, including farmers, including food producers. Contaminated water with petroleum is really not good for agriculture either. The American Soil Science Society talks about how petroleum hydrocarbons can be particularly bad for soil health, even at very low concentrations. If we have to pull from other sources like Windward Oahu, like further west, then that's going to affect the amount of water available for agriculture. It's all one water, right? Like, so the groundwater feeds the streams and springs, the surface waters that are used for agriculture, and we also use groundwater for agriculture as well. And then the costs, right, of transporting, or I don't know, like if we have to resort to things like desalination, that's going to be much more costly. And so not only will the cost of living increase, but then the cost of food production will increase, at least local food production, which means we're going to have to look to other sources like imported food, even more so, which because of climate change and fossil fuel price increases is going to get more and more expensive. And then the economic impacts, right? So if we can't have, if our tourism industry gets taken out because people don't want to come to a place that has contaminated water, if our other industries aren't able to generate the economic activity they need to sustain themselves, or our lending institutions are going to have major impacts to their ability to provide credit for economic activity. That's going to all just bear down on our economy, and that means the larger community won't be able to support local food producers and the expansion of our local food production infrastructure. And also too, I think it's important to note that it's well recognized on the international, national, and local levels that traditional farming methods, traditional crops, indigenous knowledge in food production are key to regional climate resilience. And even in the highly urbanized area that's surrounding Kūkākūkā, there are native Hawaiian farmers. They are creating kipuka to restore traditional farming, to educate others about how we can produce food, even in today's modern settings. They depend on groundwater sources that are at risk of contamination, and they're probably the first, if the aquifer is contaminated, they're going to be the first ones to be impacted because of the contaminated groundwater. And so essentially a big catastrophic release could end these efforts and keep these seeds of our future food security from growing. And then it's and then looking also too at the ecological integrity of the area. Again, the fisheries and the local iʻo of Puʻuloa were highly prized for their abundance. They continue to be a source of subsistence even today. They also serve as a nursery area because of this groundwater, this estuarine mixing of salt and fresh water. It continues to serve as a nursery area, not just for food resources, but also the building blocks, right? The limu, the crabs, the things that help support the larger ecosystem, the fisheries that then could provide the source of food security for the rest of the island. So in closing, just wanted to reflect on how, this Red Hill facility for 80 years, it's been threatening the purity, the integrity of our island's water source. This water source has provided for us for life on this island for millennia, all the way up to the present day. And we simply cannot allow the loss of our future food security, the very future of ourselves and of other generations to come to be destroyed by this threat. And so we all have, I think, a responsibility to be the generation that finally takes this menace out once and for all. Yeah, and with that, happy to answer any questions that folks may have. You can email me at my email, waynetanaka@sierraclub.org. To find out more, you can also go to sierraclubhawaii.org/redhill, and we have some information there. And thank you.
Yes, mahalo nui, Wayne. I want to right up on your screen, there's a QR code. If you guys can click on that, it will connect you to a pledge. Yes, I believe that you can do to help everyone that is currently very active in this issue. As you can see, it's a very heavy issue. Mahalo ku'ule for what you said about how much this resonates with our Oli that she had taught us earlier. This isn't an enormous crisis, so it really needed to be discussed today, especially in regards to food security. Mahalo so much, Wayne. We will have a panel discussion at the end if you guys have any questions, or again, if you want to directly contact Wayne as he gave his info, you can go ahead and do that as well. I am looking to see if we've got our next speaker here. We've got Chef Mark Noguchi?
Yep.
All right. Aloha, Mark.
Aloha.
Okay, well, I want
That is
to,
me.
yes, we're going to bring you on. Mark Noguchi is an incredible chef, Aina man, and teaches at Punahou, so I'm going to pass it on to you. Mahalo.
Aloha kako. Mahalo for allowing me to space, Kelly, and to everybody participating. I would like to thank you in today's, middle of the week, and we're all busy. Everybody got kuleana, yet everybody took the time, right, to create space and hold space for these discussions. I am actually in Maunalua Bay, and it's interesting. I told Kelly, I said, hey, when you can you do me a big favor? Can you please text me the basic talking points, because I needed to Pule to get ready. I need to kind of set myself up for this, because we've been spending the past 36 hours kind of doing this work over here. But really, it's all Pule, it's all together, because we're here to talk about food security, food sustainability, times of crisis. What are we going to do? And instead of any hyperbolical sort of, charts or graphs, and to be honest, I don't know how to put that all together. But I wanted to just share, I guess, a moment of how we do it, right? So what I'm going to share with you is how myself, my ohana, our community around us that we surround ourselves with, that we work in, this is how we prepare ourselves, and this is how we become food, resilient. It's just one way. I'm certainly not going to say that my way is the way, but it is what we found that works for us. So I believe that we're an island, we are on an island with finite resources. So I've always sort of believed that if we can do good, if we can live well and learn how to take care of each other and our aina. Imagine, as an example, what you can do on the continent, or what you can do, in areas with more resources, because ours are finite. So one way that we practice resiliency is by engaging our community in the sense of being of service. That is certainly something that both myself, my wife, our Keiki, and I'm so glad our Keiki, they didn't have a choice. We dragged them everywhere. I have pictures of our daughters in the 3-compartment sink at restaurants. Yep. It's weekends when had to prep, we'd take the kids, throw them in the first sink, give them a mixing bowl, a couple deli cups and a whisk, and they're good for 6 hours. And that's how we did it. We kind of did it together in a Kako sense, in the same way that we're all here. And by doing more than talking, I feel like we have made impact. We have encouraged others to kanu, to grow their own food. And gang, for those of you that I might be preaching to the choir, I might not, I'm not sure. But for those of us that have ever wanted to grow their own food, a lot of people think you need a lot of space, but you don't. You can set up a 4x4 box, and you'd be surprised. You will grow more lettuce than you can eat. And then to also resiliency, to show the people that it's not hard. You share with your neighbors. And even like my brother-in-law, I thought was really, really cool. They live in an apartment. They live in a 750 square foot apartment, and they have a couple pots outside, and then they got cucumber and a couple other simple plants, and they share with their neighbors. And and we were just talking about it a couple weeks ago how their neighbors are like, I never realized you could just stick it in a pot like that. So to me, I think those are the ways that we effect change, is by doing and then by sharing, right? And then we're really fortunate to have spaces like this where, I see 56 participants, and I don't know, maybe I know 5. So for the other 50 so of you, this is the first time that we get to share this knowledge together, right? It's the first time that we get to share our ike, right? Our vision. And I think that, I think that is certainly one way that we practice resiliency. I don't have, I looked at all the other points about, how do we prepare for tragedy and etc. And I think that the small steps is how we do it. And that's how it works. Sorry, I apologize. I've been talking about the other side, and I'm trying to clear my head and sort of working this Zoom format. But Kelly, is there anything else? Anything that I might have missed so far?
I really know. I think what you're sharing is so awesome. But you're also an incredible chef. And I know we're a little behind on time, but I don't know if you want to share any way that when you were low on food or something you did, like a tidbit of any kind of a tip, because honestly, sure. my first intro to ʻUlu was from you. He came to our Ehola event, and you shared about ʻUlu in a way you were so passionate about it that I was like, I don't know, it really grabbed me, and I never forgot that. Especially how you told me to take the stem and you bury it upside down so that the sap can drip. The
sap drains out, yeah.
And how to identify when it's ripe enough to pick.
Okay, well, so real fast is I'll cover it. Thanks for the what do they call it? Not teleprompter, but like the hint. When you think about ʻUlu, right? For instance, we've had our ʻUlu tree buried. We had our daughter's piko under there, and it was in a pot for about the past 6-7 years. We never had aina, so that's why we kept it in there. And now that we have aina, our first thought was, hey, we should put the ʻUlu tree in the backyard there. But then I was thinking to myself, it's like, okay, we have a little bit of aina. This ʻUlu tree is going to be huge. And for any of us that has an ʻUlu tree, we all know, right? When it's ʻUlu season comes around, there's so much to share. And what we ended up doing is we decided to plant the ʻulu tree on pu'u manoa. And the reason for that is, hi, Auntie. No, they'll be, oh, I don't know, but they're all right there. They're all right there. Sorry. This is the life. This is real quick. So gang, this is, you know, we talk about resiliency and we talk about sort of how we inspire each other through community. It's by aggregating amazing people like this. And so I apologize that, yeah, you know, when I'm on these things, if I'm outside, I cannot help. I still gotta wave at everybody. For what? And but with the ʻulu is you know, we planted pu'u manoa for it to thrive and be able to be shared with everybody else. You know, we can go, it'll always be there. Our daughter is, she is you know, she is a manoa wahine, you know, and so it made sense to share it in that way. So the more that we give, that more that we do like that, the resiliency just grows. It's not something that we need to, like, you know, hashtag, or it's not something that, honestly, you don't need to think about it that hard. You just gotta, you know, you gotta do it. It's like with the ʻulu is during COVID, it was a beautiful thing where I remembered people freaking out about food, you know, and that's what happens, I think, when we are displaced and when we're detached, when we don't understand our sense of place. Then when these little factors come in like that in the times of crisis, we freak out. We know what to do. We're so lucky that we have, we were surrounded by Aina-based people. So our freezer was full. You know, we always had deer, right? Always had kalo, always had ʻulu, always had luʻau. And with those things, we never went hungry. And we just kept going, like, you know, we call each other up, like, hey, you need deer? No, I'm good right now, freezer full. So for those of us that are thinking about, we didn't eat beef or chicken. We had pork. I gotta make lechon. We had pork, but still, yet it was utilizing what we had around us. And I think more than ever right now, we're in this amazing time of access. We, as Hawaii people, we have access to really good food, and there's no better time than now, I think, to try new things, grow a plant, engage, share with your neighbors. I guess that was the biggest advice that I gave people when they asked, you know, what can I do, especially during lockdown, right? Everyone, you know, what can we do? What can I, you know, how can I be useful? What's the secret to getting through this lockdown? It's like, be nice. Being nice equals resiliency. It equals food sovereignty to me. You know, it all makes sense. Yeah. Just my thoughts.
Mahalo nui. No, that's such rich. Yes, aloha. I mean, it's aloha aina. Love for the land, but love for everyone, you know, and it is really, I mean, we all got to eat food. It's a kako thing. But you're bringing up really great points that makes me want to, I really want to segue now into our next guest speaker. Thank you. Mahalo so much, Mark.
Yeah, mahalo, gang. Thank you for, thanks for letting me share.
Yes, and want to bring up Kaʻiana Runnels.
Kaʻiana.
Mahalo nui. Mahalo, Gooch. And Kaʻiana is going to really share a lot of exactly kind of what Mark's talking about, but on a much deeper Aina-based level. So aloha, Kaʻiana. Mahalo so much for joining us today.
Mai, wau Kaʻiana noho au, ma laupo hoi hoi, ma moko ke ave ka ahupua o Kihalani, ka o laia ma lo'o kuone hanau, ma ʻOahu, ka kuhi hewa. My name is Kaʻiana Runnels. I live in ahupua of Kihalani in Laupa Hoi Hoi on Moko Keawe or Hawaii Island. And laia ma lo'o, laia vai, those are my Aina hanau. On the kind of north shore of Oahu. And yeah, mahalo for having me. So, you know, my little blurb here is, my kuleana in life is to teach Ohana how to grow food organically, but more importantly, in the way our kūpuna grew food. And so for me, I've noticed that when you teach the adults how to grow food, it doesn't last as long. Meaning they go home and they feel the ahi anana, that burning inside to grow food, and then it kind of dwindles away. When you teach the kids, same thing. They'll go home and they'll grow food for a little while, and then they pick up the video games and social media. And So when you teach all three generations together, what we do is we host all three generations at our aina, and we try to connect the bond between the three. And we notice that when you teach all three, it's long lasting, and the food growing becomes a lifestyle. Yeah, the mahiʻai becomes a lifestyle. And so the things that wake me up at night is those crisis moments where something happens and the ship stopped coming. And it is an issue that we're relying on about 90 to 95% of our mahiʻai, our food, from America and from other places. And we're exporting about the same amount of what we grow here. That's very concerning. And so, yeah, one thing I teach the youth in times of crisis, especially, is that they all need to have a backyard garden. Moku kiave, no excuse. Everyone has a backyard. Everyone can grow food. Oahu, different story. I know some of you, on Oahu, they do this weird thing where they stack humans on top of each other in concrete. And that becomes a little bit harder to grow food. And so, but still can. Like was mentioned earlier, use what get, right? If you have balcony, use balcony. If you have auntie's house, use auntie's house. Say, hey, talk to your tutu, but hey, can I just have a little box in the back of your yard? And I love what was mentioned by Chef Mark earlier. He said that Hawaii functions off a very unique system. People call it different terms. It's not a barter economy or a barter system. I call it a makana system. And we need to get back to that. I am so fed up with that piece of paper called fiat currency that we use as a transaction. To me, it never has and never will make sense to work your whole life to earn paper to buy food that was grown somewhere else. And so I teach the youth to not work in terms of that piece of paper and to reject that system of living. And it is possible, especially where we live on this mokupuni. And so what I teach them is in times of crisis, there's three steps that you should be going to in order to feed yourself. Step one is you go to the avava. You go to the valleys here at Mohokiawe. They are filled with food. There are 50-year-old ʻUlu trees. There are 100-year-old patches of mahiʻai off in the forest. There are avocado, mango. I mean, every tree you could imagine, papaya, exists in the forest. I teach them how to gather and eat the rarer forms of food, what leaves they can harvest to create a salad, how to prepare the inside of the hapu'u fern as your main starch, or the pu of the la'i, the root of the tea leaf, and just getting creative in what foods we're consuming. And what it all stems back to is changing our palate right now. So when students come, families come, we eat how we should be eating, how we were eating, and how we will be eating in the future if those big moku stop coming across the ocean with all of our food. And so that was step one, right? You're going back to that hunter-gatherer mode. All the boys, all the girls here, they all hunt. My kids hunt, everybody hunts. And so feral pigs, they're a nuisance, but we're mahalo because it's me'ai, it's food. Step one is you go to those places and you get your food. Step two would be your garden, right? In times of crisis, go to your garden. In Hawaii, man, you plant one ʻulu tree, like everyone said, that multiplies into a lot of other things. It's such an interesting society we live in, and I'm so mahalo for it. And it's all I've known, but I'm a mahiʻai that grows mostly kalo. I grow all of our kūpuna kalo varieties. And even though I'm a kalo farmer, I feel like I eat more fish than some lawaiʻa. I feel like I have more fresh vegetables than some of our organic vegetable farmers, because when I take kalo to someone's house, I'm so mahalo that they value it so greatly. I've never left a house without these, just bags of food. And so that's why our society is amazing. And I think we're going to do just fine when crisis hits, because we are a very giving people, and we no can lose that. That's the key, is we no can lose that. And I do worry a little bit about the influx of foreigners to Hawaii, because they don't have mana o Hawaii, right? They don't necessarily think like us. They love the concept of storage, of bank accounts, of building up and holding wealth. Whereas we love being able to share and distribute that. That's who we are as a people. And so that is a little concerning, but that's an opportunity, right? To educate and to show how we do over here. So yeah, being able to grow food is critical. My thing is kūpuna crops, right? Kūpuna kalo, kūpuna mahiʻai, ko, uala, uhi, pia, ava. All of these plants are the ones we should be planting for many reasons. First reason, our bodies digest those foods the best. Our bodies do not digest foods well that were introduced, like pasta and white rice and bread in any form. Our bodies aren't used to digesting those kinds of starches. We like complex carbohydrates, like Auntie Ino said, in their fermented form. It's interesting to hear all of your ʻUlu culture, because it's very similar to our kalo culture here, and how we, our kuʻi kalo weekends, every weekend we kuʻi kalo at mahale, and it is exactly what that picture showed. It's a time to be leʻa, to gather, be happy, put that good intention into your ai. And I've tried ai from the store. I've tried poi from the store, and it sours weird. It does. I agree with what you said. It sours different. I don't know if it's the fact that your hands aren't touching it in the process as much, or the way it's processed. It's not a ku'i, it's a machine, but it does ferment weird. And so mahalo for all of that ike about ʻulu. So just to wrap everything up, I remember living in Laie and a big storm came through and all the electricity went out in Laie for the whole North Shore for like 3 weeks, I think it was out. We had 8 to 10 imus a day going in the neighborhood. All the fridges and freezers were emptied and everybody ate. That I've never had an abundance, so great. I've never eaten so much. We had the kūpuna out there doing the hukilau and bringing in all the i'a in hukilau bay, Laie Bay. We had people just sharing on the wide. And so I feel like we still have that. When we were here 3 or 4 years ago, when Tutu Pele came to visit down in Puna, same concept. Everybody got together, everybody ate well. When we was up on the Mauna, same thing. We all ate so good from just the abundance of what we had. And so I'm not too concerned about crisis, but it doesn't negate the fact that we do need to prepare. Not just temporally and physically, but also spiritually for what might come. Having a spiritually strong mind, ready to aloha, ready to share is critical, I think. So yeah, that's just some of the I wanted to share. And I hope that was okay, Kelly. Anything you want to know, we can talk story, Mumbai. But yeah, oia vale, mahalo.
Oh, wow. Mahalo piha, Kaʻiana. Yeah, we will have time at the end for all of our participants. If you have questions or in the chat works, I might not always feel very full because this is, we're sharing like life, like science again meets skill, meets spirit, and that together is like, what's going to help us through crisis. Fermented foods brings me to something, that every single indigenous culture has a fermented food. And for us, it's sour poi, like Kaʻiana was saying, and Auntie Ino and our community navigator shared about ʻulu. Fermentation is microbes, your microbiome. It's these tiny invisible bacteria that is your immune system. It strengthens and gives life to you. It is also our ancestors because they've been around since the beginning of time. You'll find microbes in the soil. You'll find microbes in rich soil now, nothing that's been used with fertilizers and things that destroyed the soil, but organic soil. That again, that what Ku'ule talked about, the lepo popolo, that's the microbiome. That's the microbe in the fermented foods that you eat that strengthen you and give you health and vitality because that's their purpose. So this is so rich, and I'm so thankful for you guys. Mahalo nui to our incredible guest speakers.
Kili, could I say one thing real quick on that concept of microbes and how important it is? One word that I learned from microbe from Uncle Jerry Konanui, he was one of my kumu. he used to always, every time we kuʻikalo, he would ihiʻai and he would throw all the ili into under the ʻulu tree. And he would say, for the gods, for the gods. And I used to always think, wow, that's kind of like borderline blasphemous, like throwing the gods the scraps, you know, but, and then I came upon a word that Pukui used in one of her documents, and she referred to these microbes as akua. And so one word for microbe is akua. And really what he was saying is he was feeding the microbes. And you notice the next day after you throw the ili or the ilikana under the ulu tree, all the white, right? The cotton candy poof come and so when we're consuming that, especially when we're consuming microbes from our own ahupua'a, from our own mala, yes, that's critical, because those are the microbes we breathe every day. Those are the microbes that are in our kino and in our opu and in our na'au, and they know how to digest those microbes the best. So we shouldn't even be eating, food from a different mokupuni necessarily, yet alone a different continent, right? Our microbes they don't relate to those microbes. And so that concept of microbes is very interesting. Yeah, one word for them is akua, and you are what you eat. Yeah, and so that's just the one I had.
Oh, that mahalo. Yes, exactly. I was taught that as well, that our microbes is very much a very intrinsic part of our creator. And it is so relevant that it'll be named akua. Mahalo nui for that. And you brought up another really good point, again, to eat within your ahupua'a, because food is going to take on characteristics to survive in whatever environment you are living in. So if you are living in that same environment, so is the microbes, or you're going to adapt and feed off each other. So that reciprocal relationship that is so important, and to our identity as Pacific Islanders and Native Hawaiians, our relation to Haloa, Nakalau, Kapalili, is my background, that is our eldest brother. So that reciprocal relationship is very important. Mahalo nui, Kaʻiana. We're gonna thank you everybody for your patience. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or if you want to ask now, but we're gonna have time at the end. We are going to move on now to Dr. Dayna Schultz. Mahalo nui again for everyone, for you on this journey with us as we're learning and growing together. So welcome, Dr. Dayna Schultz.
Mahalo, everyone, and I appreciate everyone's patience. However, I am aware of our time, so I'm going to touch on a few of the slides. I'm not going to go through all of them. However, they will be available for your viewing. So I have some big shoes to fill and a hard act to follow after all our wonderful guest speakers. So as much of a blessing as it is for me to hold this kuleana of being able to merge the Western and Hawaiian perspectives, it is a big kuleana. So I want everybody to know I'm hoping I can provide you some enlightenment today, because it's not often that you get to provide the Western lens to an Indigenous practice. And that's exactly the spin we're taking today, because our project is about Indigenous response to disaster. And I am now tying in some of the Western concepts to kind of make sense of what's going on. So I'm going to start with referencing this report from the 2007 COSIG project, which was conducted by Jackie Hong and Rebecca Beardsley. Okay, next slide. So as we heard for the last several minutes of our webinar, the importance of culture and health, connecting who we are to the Aina always. So important points that I wanted to share with everyone is our health, our people, our identity, all ties back to the Aina and our culture. So it's important to always remember that as Indigenous people, as Native Hawaiians, we have a spiritual connection to our ancestral place. So wherever your moku is, you are tied to that area. I have been fortunate to move to certain areas of the island, but now I'm in Ewa, and that's where I reside, and that's the Aina that I take care of. We always look at relating things to past, present, and future. So I know with our olis and our pules, we do them in essence of 3. That is because we are always calling forth our ancestors. We want to be able to honor what was given to us, acknowledge what's in the present, and also prepare for the future. Everything is done with intention. So intention can be positive or negative, and however you set forth, that's the outcome that you're going to get. Intention and understanding is also very important when we talk about culture and health. As Indigenous people, we look at the flow and use of energy. So therefore, when we're looking at how we do things, we want to be able to accept rather than resist, because when we resist that flow, there's a blockage, right? So we want to make sure that we are moving through things and not being stuck at things. And lastly, we want to acknowledge pu'uhonua, a safe place. So I learned that it's not just a physical being, a physical place, but you can be a pu'uhonua as a person as well. So being able to have all these concepts as we walk through this webinar, walk through our life, I think it's always good to have this kind of grounding piece for us. Okay, so this slide here, it's a trifecta. When I look at it, so here again is the essence of three. So we have the words pono, lokahimana, and ola. Okay, so pono actually means achieving balance, mind, body, and spirit. So to make things good, to be in a good state. Ola is achieved by having all of this. So we're looking at lokahi. Lokahi also means unity or harmony. And mana is the spirit and power to move within. Each person has that. And in essence, creating healthy life. And in this is kuleana, as we talked about, our kuleana to take care of our land, our kuleana to take care of our people, our kuleana to take care of our space. So all these values are important to who we are and how we move forward every single day. In this slide, we're looking at parallel strengths between Western and Hawaiian healing practices. So those of us that have been in the field, or maybe not, you may find this first time seeing something like this. But I know being able to connect with the culture and standing in two worlds every day of my life, like being in the Western world of holding a doctorate in a clinical psychology field and seeing patients, but yet knowing who I am internally, it's a definite challenge some days, because I'm dealing with people that want the Western. So you're looking at how Western views things, to take at the top, focus on physical and psychological signs and symptoms of causes. Like, what's the problem? Like, why are you doing this? Like, it must be something physical in your body. Versus when you're working with a practitioner or you're working with someone cultural, they look at spiritual and interpersonal reasons and causes. They're not trying to put a band-aid on you. They want to find out what's going on with you, with your ano, what's going on with you personally. You know, was there something in your past that could have triggered something? And moving on down, you see organic or psychological cause models. So there's like depression, like Vex cognitive model. Like there's gotta be reasons, like you had so much negativity in your life and you started believing you're negative. Like you're no good, you're never gonna equate. And causal balance models in our Western world or in our Hawaiian world, we look at how we've been treated. So like historical trauma, things of that nature. Treatment involves medicine, cognitive restructuring, and lifestyle changes. So that's when we think about, oh, we're going to send them to a high-end resort, a high-end facility to go ahead and fix them, right? Because that's what the Western world looks at. Let me give you a pill. Let me go ahead and give you 12 sessions of cognitive behavioral therapy in a room with 4 walls, and then you're going to be better. Versus actually going out to the aina, calling on our ancestors, using our la'au to see how we can make better, make balance within ourselves, and possibly ho'oponopono to repair relationships. Because when we look at our overall will, our overall person, like our systems are huge. We have not only us, but we have our family, our friends, and people are in our circles. And then finally, we look at what the Western world always wants to see is the science and the evidence base, which I know every single day. Like I'll have a client come in and they'll present with A, B, and C symptoms, and for me to be able to connect them with a medical provider, I have to speak the Western language of what's going on. However, there are those clients that come in and say, like, I really don't want medication. I don't want to be given this and the other. I think I just need to connect. I feel like there's a void in my na'au, there's a void in my gut. I don't sleep well because I feel like I'm imbalanced. So that is where we take on the faith-based or the cultural practices. And this was the consensus of the group that was done. So this is 2007, mind you. So I know that the stats are much, they've increased since then. So in 2007, 78% of Native Hawaiians believed it was important to practice culture on a daily basis. I know that's a higher number now. With the most recent changes of what's happened, I can see our people being proud to represent who we are. COVID is a good example, like being able to sustain, turn to our family, turn to our land to be able to help us through. And 73% report an interest in developing their language. So I know even that, through the spike of COVID, I've seen so many ʻōlelo noʻeaus coming over and of schools. People wanted to learn the language to be able to connect. So that's also increased. And then 80% being proud of their ethnic heritage. I know that's even a higher number now. Okay. And then this slide here talks about how ancestral memory changes us and turns into our ability to take on new behaviors. So ancestral memory is something that we have innate and internal, and it kind of comes with us. So it reawakens that fire inside of us, our cultural beliefs, values, and practices. Sometimes we know, but we don't know how we know. And that's just the cultural reawakening of things our kūpuna have placed in us, things we've asked for. I'm getting chicken skin right now. Like these are the things that we know, but we don't know how we know. And then that leads to self-validation and worth, which leads to willingness to try new things and new behaviors. And then we get into how this looks with new behaviors. We get reinforced by such as being able to help one another, survive in the COVID, being able to provide food for our families, provide food for those that don't have, and changing in ourselves, which leads to a change in behavior overall. And for this concept, I'm going to whip through it because we kind of talked a lot about it, but I wanted to give you the Western term to what we do. So collectivism versus individualistic cultures. Collectivistic means we are all together, like it's a priority of a group. And according to research and Western studies, indigenous cultures are more collectivistic, such as we see each other as important. We will look to what the group needs versus an individual person. An individualistic approach is more of a Western approach. And this is the founder, initially Ferdinand Tanis, but it goes on and it, people have then improved or added on to this theory. And in 1980, we have a Dutch psychologist that compared collectivism and individualism from cross-cultural perspectives, which is also used in a lot of schools of thought now. If you go through any kind of psychological or psychology program, you'll hear about things of this nature. Okay, next. So here's a good example of focus on collectivistic versus individualistic cultures. When you're in a collectivistic culture, such as Mama Ino, she shared, we think about our relation to others, like who we are, our role we play, and we look at what's best for the group. Common goals, so how can we together? So kuleana, moving together, moving forward. And the rights of families are often looked before I look to myself. Okay, next. People are considered good if they're generously and helpful. And we notice that when we have someone that's more of an outsider standing off to the side, not willing to participate, we wonder, what's going on with that person? Are they part of us or are they separate from us? Okay, next slide. Collectivistic versus individualistic again stresses the importance of community, selflessness, and value traits. It doesn't mean that we completely put ourselves off to the back, but we want to make sure that everyone is taken care of before us. And I know that's a very local thing. That's a very cultural thing that we do. Like we take care of everyone before ourselves. But then someone will take care of us. That's just kind of how our system runs. Right? We're never alone. And also looking at cultural differences is important. So we kind of had a lot of that already. I don't want to reiterate that right now. And then next slide. Okay, self-perception in regards to collectivistic cultures, right? So we look at personality traits and characteristics. I'm smart, funny, and athletic is someone that have a personality trait that they could say collectivistic cultures will describe themselves. Rather, I'm sorry, individualistic. When you look at collectivistic, we look at who we are in relation to our family, our friends, our system. I'm a good son, I'm a brother, I'm a friend, I'm a teacher, I'm a that. Like I have a role to play, sense of place, sense of self, and identity. Okay, next. Love this picture. We just were up in Waikikua the other week. So relationships, that's another big thing. We talk about the importance of building relationships and that being relational versus transactional. Like we don't, like Kaʻiana mentioned, like, you know, the money and the financial and all the Western things really don't equate to us, because at the end of the day, if uncle is not good, auntie is not good, vice versa, we can't move forward. There is a rift, and we need to make sure everybody is in harmony for us to move forward as a unit. Okay, next. So conformity, it's easy. I like the colors. It's easy for us to kind of build into the Western mold, and that's what happens oftentimes, or the majority mold, right? We're gonna just kind of go with the majority because it's easier to just kind of blend in versus stand out. So I encourage you as individuals to stand out, stand in your own truth, be who you are, despite how awkward and out the box it may feel. Like I'd rather be true to myself than struggle with being in the mix and getting lost in the sauce, say. Okay, so we made it to the end. This beautiful picture Pule shared with us. She said it's from the day she found the ma'aleva. So I wanted to share it because I was looking for a rainbow to add in the ending of our slide. So basically, this clinical consultation was to provide an understanding of Indigenous practice through a Western lens. We took the shift. Cultural reclamation as a remedy is probably one of the best things we can do, because we know fighting, violence, getting mad, yelling, all that energy goes out to where and for what reason, right? We need to keep it within us so we can then take care of ourselves and our families. We rise up in the face of adversity and be true to ourselves. We shouldn't have to stand and prove who we are anymore in this day and age. We are such wonderful and strong people, no matter where our lands are. And the last thing I want to leave you with is be the aloha you wish to see in the world. Aloha is something that I have learned to live every day. Mahalo to Uncle Bruce and Auntie Kehao for being such good teachers and family members to me, that I strive to be as enlightened as they are every day. So please remember that in everything you do, intention is key. So even if you're faced with something you're not agreeing with, you're faced with someone that is once again taking away our land or taking away our resource, pray for them, give them aloha, because the hope is then they will see and we'll reciprocate one day. Mahalo everyone for your time. These slides will be available as well in our webinar series.
Okay, to all of our incredible participants, thank you so much for your time. We want to open this up now for questions. Any mana'o you wish to share, any questions you have for our speakers present, our community navigators. We definitely have presented a lot. I know it's a lot to digest, but you'll receive a lot of this in the toolkit later on. So mahalo nui. So opening up the floor for any questions, comments. Let's see.
Can I just mahalo not only everyone here, but mahalo those who have spoken, Dayna, so well about all of the ike that is to indigenous cultures. And what I love about that is the notion of understanding that that's the way we want to lead. We want to lead with who we are and have that complement of Western understanding, because so many of us are Western trained, but we want to lead with who we are. So when Dayna spoke so well about that, it's not an either or conversation, it's both, but we want to lead with who we are. And we have choices. So many of us are multi-ethnic like myself, but I choose, that is my choice, a koho'ia, a koho, that I choose to lead with indigenous Ike and Mana'o from where I have grown up. So it's really important. We're not talking about, you know, choosing as in either or, we're choosing both, but we choose to lead with who we are. And that's a very important thing, because often people hear, oh, they're talking, oh, only get wisdom from indigenous and only this. And no, we're just letting you know that we're choosing. And it's important because there are enough of us now to have other people understand that we choose water, we choose clean water, we choose a future for our children. We choose all of those things that I've heard today. It was very meaningful. I learned a lot and I'm grateful. So thank you all. Mahalo.
And mahalo, Auntie. I just want to say something real quick. You know, I get one friend, one holiday friend, and he get all kind of guns. Why do you get so many guns? He's like, oh, but you know, if something happened, I gotta be able to protect my family. I was like, okay, maika'i, but I think we should all make a commitment to be a different human and be that person who, when the crap hits the fan, because going, that we tell everybody, come eat. Yeah, we all gonna eat together, you know? We all gonna work together too, right? If I'm inviting you onto my aina to eat food, put your hands, huli kalima ilalo, right? But the thing that I was thinking of is we gotta commit now in our brains to think like that. And shucks, if we run out of food, we all lie down, we holla together, okay? But most likely we're gonna survive because we're gonna have plenty hands. And so we gotta make that commitment to not be that person who's like freaking out, yeah? And just be like, Malie, it's gonna be okay. We can do this together. And so just as you was talking, that thought came in my head of this guy. I was like, yeah, you know, I get poo too, but it's for animals, right? They're for holo to hunt. They're not for humans. And so that's something that we should, you know, think about in the future, is just to be mentally prepared to invite others to come eat and to come work when something crazy happens. But yeah.
Mahalo, everyone. I just want to also echo what everyone just said. This is indeed a very inspiring, and I'm going to speak Hawaiian if I can say, my manao is full. So yes, I really appreciate that. There is a saying in my language that says, and that is my favorite quote that one of my great uncle shared with me. And no, I shouldn't say uncle. He's not demoted. He's papa. So we have to make sure that we give them the right title. And so this papa was reminding me to invest in people, not in material, because people will always be there. And the many hands that come together, the hands are the people, the hands are the work that makes it all be done for everyone's benefit. So I just wanna mahalo everything that was shared. It's so special to be able to hear Dayna connect us in this way. And it's like a light bulb is going off in our head, and we're like, okay, so that's what it means. And I just wanna mahalo everyone for this space to be able to share and be who we are. So mahalo.
Mahalo, everybody. Mahalo, Ino. We are at the 12 o'clock mark right now, so I'm just going to wrap up, but I would like you all to know that we will be on here afterwards to answer any questions, or if you would like to share any mana'o with us, we will be here. Just going to start with our closing. When you leave the room, there will be a feedback form for you, so please fill out the feedback form if you would like to get your continuing education units. It will also be in the email following probably tomorrow. It'll be a follow-up email to let you know that you will be receiving your recording of the webinar, as well as the toolkit and any resources shared during this webinar. I would like to acknowledge our team, my wonderful team that put this together, as well as Mama Ino and the community navigators and our network that helped really make this happen. So we have Kat Burke, who is our principal investigator, Ku'ule, who's our cultural advisor, Kea, our host and our project manager and cultural advisor. And then, as you heard, Dayna is our clinical psychologist. I am the production manager. I do all the technical stuff, so hi, behind the scenes. And then we have Vivian, who you don't hear much from her, but she is a wonderful person. She is our assistant, our grad student assistant. Our next webinar will be on Thursday, March 17th at 10 a.m. It will be on housing security, and we will have Deja Ostro, is that correct? How do you say your last name? But we will drop the registration link in the chat as well as in your follow-up email. So please be on the lookout for that, and we would love to see you guys again. And to close out, we will invite Pule to do ʻUlu once more.
Hola, mahalo kako. I know we just learned this over the last couple webinars, but if you can just join me with the pa'ilima part. This is the pule that closes out the mana of the webinar for now until we see each other again. Again, we'll be here hanging out. So just to embody the lepo popolo, or the richness of the earth that we come from in this way. Mahalo for joining me. The words are on the screen. Ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani auho, ale kalepo popolo. Ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani auho, ale kalepo popolo. Ha'ule kala, ha'ule kapo, ha'ule kalani, ha'ule kani auho, ale kalepo popolo. Oh yeah, mahalo kako, and we'll see you on part 3 of the series in March. Mahalo.
Mahalo, mahalo, everyone. So our webinar is officially over. It's 12:04, but again, like Jackie had said, we are open for any further discussions if you wish to stay past the time.